Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, we're going to be doing, I guess, an overview of the latest Producer from the Letter Live, number 66. Excuse me if I sound dead. I streamed for 17 hours yesterday, including all of this stuff, a 6-hour live letter. Then 2 more than they promised us. And I'm live again right now, so what I have left in the tank is very minimal. So I apologize for the energy levels, but if we gotta break down a 6-hour live letter, this won't be the only video. Let's at least get started. First of all, new intro screen, intro music. Watch the first 2 minutes of the actual live letter. It's beautiful. The FPS was like 120 or something on it, and it was great. Now this screenshot of the 3 people who are in charge of this 6-hour extravaganza, I want a special shout out to Aime in the top right, their translator, because I barely survived the 6 hours of watching them do this. She had to survive 6 hours of translating it herself. So for the love of God, thank that woman, because she has the soul of a champion. I have no idea how to do it. Speaking of which, these screenshots, everything was officially translated, but Discord compiled everything, and there are translations that are on this Discord as well. So thank you to Miyuna for doing the translations, and thank you to, I'd assume it is Aluna, yes, Aluna, for providing the screenshots. This is in the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit Discord translation and live letter channel. They even have the opening right here. Look, actually, I can play it because they included it right here. Watch. There you go. Here, there you go. Look at that. Look at it. Oh, look at the moon. Oh, it's so beautiful. There we go. There we go. End Walker. Oh, it's beautiful. In the distance. And then it just plays the music. So I don't want to get DMCA'd, so I'm going to leave that off. And then they went right into job adjustments. This was 4 hours on its own. We got the job action trailer, which I'll have posted my reactions to by the time you see this. So please go watch that. I reacted to it live with Sly at this and Frosty, and I was so excited. So excited. A few big things. They're not going back to Heavensward job design. Didn't think they would. And they are trying to change a lot of skills so they line up with either 60 or 120-second timers. Not necessarily both of them, but one and or both. So expect a lot of the timers to change. Obviously, anything we see or hear is still in development and subject to change. So don't take everything you see or everything you hear from this live letter as definitive and as how it will definitely be when we get the game in November. So they started with Tank here after playing the job action trailer, which we will not be going over right now very much. We're gonna leave that for something else. So for tanks, they're trying to make using defensive skills more optimal than they are now. Now they already know, like, oh, you see a tank buster, you see an ability, and you're like, let me pop a defensive, and they know that that's like kind of normal, but they want to further reward actually performing such a timing and such an action. We don't know how. They did not elaborate on it at all. But they want the tank, pressing the tank buttons to feel better about them actually being a tank, which is okay. Also, adjustments will ensure combos are not broken by ranged attacks. This is not exclusively a tank change. This is also true for the melees, but essentially if you need to throw a ranged attack for any reason, then you can. Now, it's going to come down to calculations about whether or not it is worth actually throwing a ranged attack out versus holding your GCD. That's going to be a pretty simple calculation that everyone will have to do after we get all the potency numbers and after we actually get our hands on stuff in November. But at the very least, you're not griefing yourself by doing it. You could throw that Piercing Talon out. You could throw that, in the case of the tanks, your Shield Lob out, and it's not going to mess up all of your combos. On top of that, this last one, I don't know why they did it like this. This appeared in like every slide for like every role. Basically, the way the game works right now, magic potencies and physical potencies don't calculate their outputted damage the same. One potency in magic is more potent than one potency in physical. So they're leveling them out, which means potency numbers are going to change, and the way that we see them is going to change, and that might look like some things are nerfed or some things are just different. And they're just letting you know it's just because it's a calculation change. It's math. It's math stuff you don't really have to think about all too much. Paladin, again, these are not all the changes, and they're still subject to change because they're still in development. Request Cat will now be activatable regardless of remaining MP. So if you have to use a Panic Clemency, you don't just screw your Request Cat window. And I know that's not how it's pronounced, but that's how I pronounce it. So that's a pretty nice thing. You should feel a little bit more okay about using Clemency. That still doesn't mean you probably will use it more, but at least you don't completely screw your normal rotation if you ever have to do that. I also noticed they didn't mention Clemency not breaking combo. I'm hoping that falls in line with the ranged attack thing, because right now when you Clemency, you lose your combo. and it sucks. So I hope that that's also in the same line as the ranged attack change from the previous slide. They're also going to get a follow-up 3-attack combo from Confiteor, starting with Confiteor. I doubt it's 3 extra buttons. Paladin is actually one of the most crowded jobs in your hotbar as it is, so it probably replaces your basic 1, 2, 3 combo, or Confiteor just transforms into skills 4, 5, and 6 afterwards. But I can guarantee you this probably won't take up any more hotbar real estate, and Paladin honestly can't afford to give up any more hotbar real estate. It's too much. Warrior, damage up effects can now be triggered and extended by AoE combos. Kind of weird. Once all of your combos automatically trigger, you're essentially just creating a wind-up time for the sake of creating a wind-up time. Like, so you have to do a couple of GCDs before your burst. It's not that bad. Everyone usually waits 8 to 10 seconds before everyone's burst really lines up in endgame content. And for things like dungeons, casually, it's a huge, huge quality of life. But at that point, you almost wonder if they shouldn't just buff the potencies and do away with the game mechanic in the first place. But I'm sure they just want to keep some semblance of maintaining a buff up for the job. It's just once it gets to a certain point, it feels almost like, why bother, you know? Onslaught and Upheaval not being part of Beast Gauge. I expected that for Onslaught. Upheaval, I was a little surprised, but I wonder if there's anything else that uses Beast Gauge. I think, actually, I'm trying to remember in the demo. I don't think there was, not in the demo, in the job action trailer, if there was anything that used it, because they went to 50 and then they did a combo, went to 20, and then they went back to 50. Yeah, I don't know. It might literally just be your Fell Cleaves and your Inner Chaoses and your Decimates and stuff. And a new action available upon execution of Inner Release. Inner Release got changed to 60 seconds according to them during the live letter, and it has 3 charges instead of 5. So what you'll do is you'll do 2 Fell Cleaves and then this new finisher skill, like they did in the trailer itself. And it's also, you'll be doing it more frequently. So Inner Release, not as Unga Bunga, but still pretty Unga Bunga. Oh, they even mentioned that here. See? There you go. Same with Delirium, by the way, for Dark Knight. When you move on, Delirium, pretty much same deal, 60 seconds, 3 charges. But they also changed Salted Earth, and now it's just an AoE around the Dark Knight and makes a new action available while it's out. And then the Simulacrum also gains a new action, one of their new actions, which we see in the trailer, as one of the skills that it will use. Not much about Dark Knight. Tanks, honestly, as a whole, I really need to see more. We won't know more from the media tour, apparently, till somewhere in middle October, according to the live letter. So there's a lot more that definitely needs to be learned about the tanks. Gunbreaker was probably the one that made the most sense. So I had a bingo board and I said 1-button PvE combos. I meant as a whole, so I didn't count this as bingo. But I've been predicting this for a while, that Savage Claw, Wicked Talon, and Gnashing Fang will all be reduced to 1 button so they can make room for more Gunbreaker skills. And sure enough, my predictions ended up coming true for this one. So they are giving them some new skills, and there's also some more speed involved with the job, because now there's a continuation that follows up Burst Strike. So when you Burst Strike, you also have to press continuation as well, and not just during your Gnashing Fang combo. We also saw a skill that used 2 cartridges and a trait that raises the maximum cartridges to 3. So they're just leaning more into the cartridges aspect of the job, which makes sense given what Gunbreaker is. It'll probably always be its core identity. Melee DPS, actually the part that excited me the most. Now these things are whatever. Feint and Addle both got changed, so while they primarily reduce physical for Feint and magical for Addle, Feint and Addle will also slightly reduce the opposite's damage type. So Feint will now, let's say Feint's 10% lower physical damage dealt, it would also be 5% less magic damage dealt. These are not numbers that we've seen, these are just examples. And Addle would be the reverse, 10% magic, 5% physical. So that way they're not only useful for one specific thing, and they cover more damage types. Adjustments will ensure combos are not broken by range attacks, and the parity between physical and magical. Those are both on the tank slides as well, so we don't need to discuss that. Dragoon, AoE rotation will be expanded. We saw in the trailer a 4th AoE part. We don't know if that's like Raiden Thrust, and it just changes the first part of the combo, or if it's actually a 4th button. I kind of hope it's just like Raiden Thrust, and it replaces the first skill, but we'll have to wait and see, I suppose, on that front. They did also try to elaborate on something later that said, like people were of course asking, can my AoE like extend disembowel finally? And they like tried to like go back and like say, yeah, like we said they were expanded, and it's like, wait, that's not what we were asking. So I don't know if it extends disembowel, because the way they tried to like double back and describe it didn't seem to answer the question. So I'm going to leave it as a 50-50 until further notice. A new action will be available upon successful execution of weapon skill combo. That's what I'm calling Fuller Thrust, featuring Bob Saget. We saw that Raiden thrust into, what is it, True Thrust into Full Thrust. Full Thrust was transformed. We saw that in the Job Action trailer. We saw that in the Benchmark trailer. So there's that as well. We also know Blood of the Dragon is going to be a trait now. You don't have to activate it. It'll always be active. So it'll just be about activating Life of the Dragon. And we saw a new Life of the Dragon skill in the trailer itself. Spine Shatter Dive will also be 2 charges. Lance charge will be 60 seconds. Litany will be 120. So a lot of things are just present. So this was weird. Grease Lightning stacks will be removed. I don't understand that because they're already gone. What I'm assuming is it means Monk will always be fast. Like, it'll never be like at lower levels you're fast, and then you get a little faster and a little faster, and finally at max level you're as fast as you can possibly be. I'm assuming it just means you'll be at that 4th Grease Lightning, like, as a main thing of the job, like, forever from, like, even the early game. But I'm not sure if that's what it means, so I'm just going to take that additional note with a grain of salt. As for other things, chakras will now be unlocked at a lower level. I asked for this. I said you need to give jobs their job gauges before level 50, 60, 70. They shouldn't have to learn these whole new job mechanics on top of already just having to learn the base. Chakras, I'm hoping that's level 30 because chakras you learn into the 50s right now. That's going to make early game Monk feel a lot better for new players. That's going to give you the skills so you can get used to the pace of the job, especially if the Grease Lightning changes do actually make you fast at the early levels. I think it's going to be one of the more fun new player jobs to level if both those things are as they seem. They're also getting a new mechanic, which we expected. They said that the 5.4 Monk rework was only laying the foundation for something they were going to do in Endwalker, and that something is Masterful Blitz. So we are indeed getting Sabin in some degree for Monk. Basically, when you activate Perfect Balance, all of your GCDs have a light chakra and a dark chakra associated with them. And if you have 2 or more light chakras, you execute one skill. If you have 2 or more dark chakras, you execute another skill. Once you've activated your yin and your yang, your Masterful Blitz will then do a different follow-up finisher. They have a 40-second cooldown. The charges for Perfect Balance, you can hold up to 2, which means this may not line up with 60s, but it lines up with 120s. So that's going to be something that I'm very, very excited to see. There's even a video demonstration of it, which, because this video is going to be too long, we're not going to go too crazy in. This is 45. I could have swore it said 40 when they hovered over it, though, so maybe it is 45. It should be 40. I'm almost positive they said 40, but I'll have to go back and double check it. True Strike and Twin Snakes won't have positionals anymore, but their other 4 skills will. I think that's a reasonable trade. I definitely wouldn't want positionals gone entirely on Monk. It's a huge part of their identity, and I would be very upset to lose that. But losing a couple to get another job mechanic, that I'm a little less concerned about. They also removed Shoulder Tackle, and instead they're giving Monk Ethereal Manipulation. You can teleport to an enemy, you can teleport to an ally, you just instant transmission to them, and you just... Unfortunately, I don't know if this actually has that as part of the demonstration. I'd like you to see it, but I don't know that it does. Oh, no, he does it at some point, I think. He, like, walks over and does it. Let's see. Does he do it? No. No. Where is it? It actually happened so fast he might have done it, and I just missed it. I don't see it, though. I got so excited I wanted to show it, but it's not here. Oh. But it looks really cool, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, and then there's the Shoulder Tackle. You can see the new Demolish. You know, they have a few of these. So these, I'm not going to go over these right now. It's too much for one video. Samurai, their AoE combos will give them Jinpu and Shifu buffs. This is, of course, in line with some of the other changes, but we're still not sure about Dragoon. And then they're getting a follow-up to Ei Jutsu and Tsubama Geishi. Tsubama Geishi is going to have 2 charges. And there's going to be a new Super Iajutsu, which we see in the Job Action trailer, which will unleash an even more powerful skill. There were a bunch of other changes gleamable from the Job Action trailer, but Samurai is going to be more Samurai. It doesn't seem like with 2 charges of Tsubame you can do a triple Madare. What you can do is 2 double Madares, because you can't Tsubame off of Tsubame, it seemed. You can only Tsubame off of the Iajutsu itself. So it means, like, maybe, I don't know if that makes, like, double tapping dots more valuable, because now, I don't know, it's probably still just going to be double Tenkagoken or double Madares, depending on what it is. I don't know if double Higanbana, because we don't know the potencies yet, if that's going to be value. Mekio will also have 2 charges, though, so the Samurai is going to be moving All right, because this is gonna keep them doing the big damage very, very frequently. I'm pretty excited to see how that turns out. For Ninja, Shadowfang will be gone, and they're also getting follow-up attacks to Raiton, Doton, and Huton. So basically, when they perform those skills, they get a follow-up amount of damage. So Huton was the skill we saw in the benchmark trailer. We also see in the job action trailer again. It's a ranged attack where a Bunshin clone dashes and does like a wind explosion. I don't remember the Doton one. I'd have to watch the job action trailer again. And the Raiton one becomes a gap closer plus a melee range finisher. So they have even more mobility. They have more ranged options. They have Ninja's gonna be zipping, zopping, moving around. It's really, really cool. So I'm curious to see how that actually ends up feeling on the job. But Doton is the only one I don't remember. It's probably like just an AOE or something. Because if you're doing Doton, you're doing an AOE anyway. So that's probably all it is. An action making it easier to apply Huton. Yeah, I thought I saw an instant Huton application. That might have been the Wind clone. But it feels like an eternity since I saw the job action trailer, so I'll have to go back and analyze the job action trailer again. Then they went into Reaper. Now this I'm going to be doing a separate video on because they've basically hovered over most of Reaper's skills. So we have unofficial translations of their early in development skills. But essentially, I'm calling this Melee Machinist based on what we've seen. They use some attacks to generate Soul Gauge. Once they have enough Soul Gauge, they use the Avatar. The Avatar gives them a buff that allows them to raise their I can't remember the avatar gauge or whatever it's called. I'll just call it the avatar gauge for now. I have the translations on another page. I just can't remember it. And then once they have enough of the avatar gauge, a shroud gauge, that's what it's called. Soul gauge for the red gauge, shroud gauge for the second gauge. Shroud, once they have 50 shroud, then they activate their avatar and their GCD becomes 1.5. They have Rapido GCDs and they have a finisher that they can do as their fifth and final GCD. They basically use 2 stacks of one resource, 2 stacks of it's super fast paced, and so as Melee Machinist, it looks really cool. It also has like a mechanic where they can draw ether from their allies when they land weapon skills and stuff, and that allows them to execute a harvest attack. They have some really cool stuff. It looks nothing like any of the other melees, but it is. I would, for the time being, I'm going to call it Melee Machinist just because of that rapid pace. It does have positionals, and they're rapid positionals. So it's going to be it looks like a very fun job. I'm super excited. Yeah, you can see these are all the hover-overs before the translations. And then I have a few pages on the side where we'll go over the translations of all these skills. It looks really, really fun. I'm really excited for Reaper. Then we have Range Physical with the Bard wondering why they showed up in the first place. And honestly, I was kind of wondering the same thing because they didn't really go into enough detail on Bard. The upcoming adjustments is the same, physical magic damage. Not much here. So Bard, they're trying to lean into certain aspects more. So a new action being available upon execution of Apex Arrow. It just looked like Apex Arrow 2. I don't know. I'm not excited to press Apex Arrow now, so I didn't really care much for Apex Arrow 2. For me, the bigger thing is the songs. So we saw in the job action trailer that when they had all 3 of their songs active and they activated another thing, it basically became a different AoE buff for the team. So I don't know if that's something you can choose to do with only one song, with 2 or 3, and it changes the effect, or if you're always just going to want to be aiming for 3 songs and it becomes part of your burst window. I don't know if it's replacing battle voice. There's a lot of questions we still have. This is one of those jobs that needed a bit more diving into because people have concerns and complaints. I wanted bloodletter charges, for example. We don't know if Apex Arrow is going to feel any better as a button to charge up, as a button to press. And right now, before 5.0 ever happens, I like to predict what jobs will be reworked in 5.1. and Bard, sadly, already at the top of that list. I know nobody wants to hear that, but just based on the information we have, I'll wait till Media Tour stuff. But sorry, 6.0, by the way. Beginning of the expansion is what I should have said, not 5.0. You know what I mean, though. It's just, I don't know how to feel. Battle Voice cooldown 120, Wanderer's Minuet also is 120. So they're trying to nail those down as your burst window skills. But we'll see. Their song durations are also 45 seconds now, which is very long, a little bit less maintenance on that front. So that's quality of life for people who may struggle with that. But they're trying to lean into its other identities, and I don't know, not enough information. I'm not excited about what I saw, though. I'll tell you that much. Machinist, more of the same, to be honest. It looks like Reassemble is going to turn drill into chainsaw, and it's going to turn your spread shot into a shotgun. That's what it looks like. It looks like reassemble actually warps skills now. So your drills will be when you don't have reassemble, and when you do have reassemble, it'll be a freaking giant buzzsaw chainsaw firing gun. So that's cool. I called chainsaw a while ago. I called it in a very different form, but I called it. And also the Automaton Queen is going to have a new action where they mentioned needing to charge it up. I don't know what they were talking about. Maybe you need to manually execute the new Automaton Queen skill, and so if you don't do it in the right time, it's messed up. But for me, Machinist, I want to see changes to Hypercharge. I want to see changes to Wildfire. We didn't see them do a full Wildfire rotation in the job action trailer, so that could mean they're significantly different. I think they only hit the Wildfire 2 or 3 times, but that could have just been for fun editing sake. So we'll see. Reassemble also is going to have 2 charges, so curious to see how that actually ends up feeling, because in your opener that means you could theoretically do 2 reassemble chainsaws, 1 at the beginning, 1 at the end, and still do a lot of damage. So it's a good question to see how it actually works out. For Dancer, they're adding follow-up skills and changing the way that their flourishes and their dances work a little bit. So basically, single target and multiple target combos will guaranteed build Esprit, which I could have swore it was called Esprit, but she called it Esprit, so I'm going to go with that. And then on top of that, your single target and AoE skills will both transform into your dance buttons when you're actually executing standard or technical step. So that way, I guess that's really more of a controller change. I never really see it as an issue. And honestly, with how few buttons Dancer is, I don't know how controller sees it as an issue. But it's also one of those things that doesn't in any way change the job or the way that you have to play it or whatever. It's just, if people found that, like, the dexterity on their hands couldn't, like, match going between, like, going from their AoE back to having to do their single target buttons because they just entered a dance. Cool. It's accessibility. There's nothing to complain about there. It just seemed weird to me. On top of that, they also said that they're going to get new finishers off of Technical Finish, Improv, and Devilment. Technical Finish looked like it unlocked a... What would I call it? Technical Finish looked like it unlocked like an instant standard step, like follow-up attack. That was the one from the benchmark trailer. It definitely refreshed standard step for the dance partner, and it probably did damage as well. So that's what it looked like, just like another big burst of damage follow-up to Technical Finish. Then for Improv, it looked like it was an AoE heal it followed up with. And then for Devilment, it looked like a giant like line AoE like Phoenix. At least I thought that's what the Devilment follow-up was. So it was, wow. Dancer looked good. I already liked Dancer. It was my main all throughout Shadowbringers. So this just makes me feel like I'll be comfy with it again. As long as Improv just doesn't. Please let me tell me. There's a few things I still want them to have done that we didn't hear about. So waiting for Media Tour. Magical Range DPS. I was super excited for this role across the board. Black Mage got this like Frostfire looking mode. Enochian's going to be like, what's it called? Enochian's just going to automatically be active as long as you're in fire or ice. So you don't have to press it. You don't have to worry about losing it. You don't have to worry about looking like a level 50 Black Mage if you screw up for any reason. You just have to get back into Astral Fire or Umbral Ice. So it's just going to be a trait that automatically applies when you're in either of those forms. And then on top of that, there's a new part of their job gauge, which looks like, I'm calling it the Frostfire. Where basically it was a fire and an ice indicator, and it changed certain things about their rotations. Looks like they had Fire 5. They mentioned having High Fire, like Fire 2 and Blizzard 2 are going to evolve into new AoEs. The proc timings for your spells were increased. It's just, Black Mage looks like they didn't screw it up. As someone who's been playing Black Mage and appreciated Black Mage all throughout Shadowbringers, I was worried they were going to screw it up. It doesn't look like it's screwed up. It looks like it's just leaning. They found a way to lean into another element of Black Mage and just make them feel more and more kaboom. And that's good, because I didn't want that to get screwed up. I was really worried about that. Sharpcast now also stacks up to 2, so that's going to be cool. Red Mage got some pretty serious adjustments, and mostly adjustments as opposed to new skills. They do have a new follow-up to Scorch, which I was like, they can't do it, right? They can't do that. They did it. They also made Verflare, Verholy, and Scorch AoE, so you can also do them as part of your AoE rotations, and they'll still contribute to, it doesn't like you don't have to swap to a single target skill during your AoE, which is pretty cool. And also a defensive party-wide enhancement will be added. We saw that in the job action trailer. We're not sure what it does. I don't think that we ever got any clarification on that. But that's, honestly, while those things sound really basic, the other ways they change the job are almost more exciting. So the amount of black and white mana that you generate and from your spells and the amount you need for your melee and your AoEs are reduced. However, they made it so that manification basically just gives you 50 instead of doubling your current amount. So you can instantly access that whenever manification is off cooldown. And it also means you won't accidentally overcap mana, which is a big quality of life for a newer red mage or something like that. And you still will see more frequent Spellblade use than you used to, but it's not going to be so much more that you feel like I cast 2 spells melee, 2 spells melee. So it's going to be pretty good. Displacement and engagement are the same potency. Embolden's recast will be 2 minutes. Manification will be just under 2 minutes, which is so you can use it at the 2-minute mark and actually have your burst hit during a burst window. And on top of that, we saw that doing 3 Moulinets also gives you access to Verflare, Verholy, or Scorch. It gives you access to some form of follow-up, I should say, at the very least. We saw that in the job action trailer. So making their AoE more interesting, more involved, making their Spellblade access a bit more streamlined, but also making sure that they feel a lot more Spellbladey, as well as also giving them some follow-up big damage hits. And they just fixed a lot of things that were kind of off about a job that was already in a pretty good spot. So we'll see how that actually ends up working out. Summoner's a new job. I'll play Summoner. I've been asking for something like this. I was like, yo, just quit the dot shit and lean entirely into Summoner. And they did that. It has no more damage over time skills. It's all direct damage. You summon Bahamut. Dreadworm Trance looked like it was gone. So it's just when you're in Bahamut mode, you have your Death Flare, I suppose, that you would have in Dreadworm Trance. It looked like Bahamut and Phoenix were also attacking of their own accord without having to like manage how many worm waves and stuff you got. I'd have to rewatch, but I think that's what it looked like to me, so you don't have to worry about ghosting them anymore. But yeah, they made the joke that you're basically Ultima. After you summon Bahamut, you can summon Garuda and do a few very like machinist-paced Garuda skills. Like they were like 1.5 second GCD Garuda skills. It was crazy. And then they had Titan, which you just alternate a few times, kind of reminded me of the way the Phoenix phase actually ends up working. And those are all instant cast. Then you have Ifrit, who only gets 2 skills, a Gap Closer and a point-blank range like finisher. And they have cast times, but they're also incredibly strong. So pretty important for your burst windows to know when you're actually using Titan, but also important in case you can't use those skills because of a boss mechanic. So you do have to keep those things in mind. Then you go into Phoenix, do that, and then you go back and you do it again. So you're just constantly summoning. Every time you summon one of these like creatures, they do an opener. And I just got logged out of the game, I think, so it's playing in the background. Shut up, game. I'm gonna have to log back in. That's fine. It looked great. It did also look like it had very few buttons, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was a little jarring. So I'll have to see how it actually feels, if it feels dead brain or if it's fun over function. I don't know. I loved it. I've been waiting for them to lean into Summoner so long that I was so incredibly pleased to actually see. There are hoverovers for most of the skills, so I did see some Summoner translations that were available on Reddit, so I'll probably look into that. You can see like a 700 potency, like Titan does a 700 potency summon and then gives you Titan mode for 30 seconds, which lets you access the skills a certain number of times. Garuda, 700 potency right there. I wouldn't worry about the potencies at all, but I'm just pointing that out. Like that's what the summons themselves are actually doing, and it is dope. For healers, this was a bit of a tough one because healers, I didn't get enough information, in all honesty. New action that applies single target buffs will be added to each healer. Okay, do you mean a shield? Do you mean a damage buff? Like, what does that mean? Cast time for offensive spells will be reduced. That's going to increase mobility for the job across the roll, something Astro had exclusively and White Mage definitely needed all of Shadowbringers. The limit break effect is also going to be wider, so that way you don't have to worry about people being too far away as much. I'm sure sometimes, but not as much. So White Mage is going to be getting, we saw in the job action trailer, like a well. My chat called it a lily pad. Pun intended. They also get like an upgrade to Holy. They'll have a lot more mobility. Divine Benison's going to have a charge system. Fluid Aura is gone. But there's still some questions. We saw some things in the job action trailer about the way they were using their lilies. And I couldn't really fully discern it, so I'm going to have to go back and watch that to give you a more in-depth analysis of it. Astro, we knew was being somewhat reworked. It wasn't going to have sects anymore. We knew they were getting rid of Nocturnal, but at that point, you might as well just get rid of Diurnal too. However, they will have Neutral Sect. They had mentioned, Neutral Shield will be usable under Neutral Sect. So Neutral Sect is going to essentially achieve the same thing it did before, and which makes it incredibly powerful still. So I think Astro is going to have a good time. We saw a ton of card changes, it seemed like, in the job action trailer. It looked like Lady and the Lord were doing these like giant AoEs. I don't know if those are basically like spread buffs. They separated minor arcanas from the major arcanas again, so or from the cards, minor arcanas from the cards again. Redraw can be used once per card. Your seals are going to be used to charge up a buff. It looked like it just made them super strong, because then we saw what looked to be the Astro equivalent of a size, which was basically a star shower, which looked great. It looked really good. It also had like a delayed heal, like a horoscope for one person, which I think actually even applied a shield, it looked like, in the job action trailer. And a big thing is it looked like a few more offensive options for Astro as well. They have the star already, which has some offensive attributes. They looked like they were getting something else. It actually looks like, I think across the board, it looked like healers had a couple more offensive options. But Astro was a bit more noticeable. Sage especially, it was a lot more noticeable. Scholar, a lot of people feel like got the shaft end of the stick. It got an action that increases movement speed, but also reduces damage dealt, which is trolly as hell, because there are mechanics that force you to move uncontrollably, and if you're moving faster, you might just die. So a little bit trolly. It's something that is useful, very useful under certain circumstances, but can also be a huge double-edged sword, more than Rescue ever was. On top of that, we just didn't really understand. They didn't talk enough about it. They will have a powerful buff for single target party members, and Scholar's always been a strong job. When they've literally done as little as possible to it, it's always been strong. But it was definitely the least exciting job they talked about. I think the whole live letter. So that one's going to be real make or break on Mediator information, and that's where we'll have to continue our discussion on it, and if it actually is quote unquote dead, as the memes would lead you to believe. Sage, Scholar is going to be pretty scarce in the beginning of 6.0. Because I don't care if you love Scholar. I have a feeling you'll love Sage more. So they have all the essential actions of a barrier healer. So on par with Scholar right off the bat. We expect that. It's another barrier healer. They can attack enemies and heal simultaneously. So they can mark somebody, and then when they deal damage, the marked player gets healed. I said I didn't think they were brave enough to do that. I have to eat my words now, because I just thought they were going to be like, oh, no, we don't want people to think they have to be DPSing. So we don't want them to think they have to. It's pretty griefing if you're not. So that's just the one ability you're not benefiting from. And then on top of that, it seems like they generate their gauge both in and out of combat, actually, and they can enhance certain skills to make them more powerful. We see that like one of their enhanced skills puts a dot on the target, for example. One of their enhanced skills is a bigger AoE heal or an AoE shield. We got to see a couple of them. And again, there are hover over translations for their skills that we'll be going over more in depth in another video. But I really like the sound effects, the appearances, and the overall flow. It's definitely for people who like more offensive healers. It seemed like a more interesting option, but I'll have to definitely take a look at the skills so we know for 100% certain that that is actually what we're going to identify with. I'm really excited. Sage and Reaper both look incredible, just based on the short displays we saw here. Way more excited for them than I am about some of the other jobs we've had in the past. Now, that was it for the job adjustments. A ton of stuff isn't covered. We know that the Media Tour is going to be where most of that stuff is really discussed. And again, they did say on this broadcast that that would be middle of October, which is anywhere between like the 10th and like the 20th or the 21st. Whenever they say middle, it's usually those middle 10 days. So somewhere between then, we'll get to learn everything else. Then for like battle adjustments, Raid Finder is gonna, listen, here in NA and then also in EU, nobody really raw queues into the Raid Finder. In Japan, they do very frequently though, and for them, it's gonna try to make sure there's one pure and one barrier healer. The Party Finder also has them separated by category now, so if you're trying to set up a party, you can deliberately choose to set up one barrier, one pure. And on top of that, for the Party Finder, going to be an option where you can only join if you haven't gotten weekly loot yet, which is a nice little thing to have. And then also search, you can't see party finders that are set to 1 player per job requirement if you are one of the jobs already in the party. I hope that's visually distinct, because sometimes you see that you can't join a party and you swap jobs and you join it anyway. If you can't see it, then that means you can't do that. So there needs to be some visual clarity that it's specifically because they already have the job that you're on. So that way you are capable of making that judgment call. And also, it does say those search results. So I guess maybe it's just you have to actually manually search. That would work. If that way I can manually search to cut out the chaff in case I want to make sure I'm not wasting my time. So you know what? As long as the search results is not just the listing and it's you actually manually searching, I think that's clarity enough. That's option enough. Duty rewards, trials will now also drop weapon coffers along with the weapon. I asked about this not too long ago. Yes, I know that's what the totems are for. They're there as a pity system. But it's still kind of lame when you have to rely on the totems if you're trying to collect multiple weapons, because you never once saw one of the 19 weapons as of this expansion drop in a single run. If you're like me and it took you 49 runs to see your monk weapon for the first time while you were also trying to save up to be able to buy the mount and didn't want to spend the extra 10 totems. So basically 8 runs is 8 weapons. You don't even need to go to 10 if you're with a static on like week 1 prog or anything like that. But if you're a multi-weapon collector, you should have better chances at this altogether. They're also changing duty rewards for a few other things. They're adding loot options to old raids. So basically every expansion we've gotten some updates to the way that like Savage and like raid loot works, and they're basically retrofitting all the old Savage raids with the stuff we've gotten in Shadowbringers. So if players want to go back and do that, or if they want to collect glam or collect specific pieces for any reason, they are able to do that. And that's going to be especially good for things like Fashion Report. Like if you need like a high Allegan boots or something, instead of going in there and hoping you get boots, you'll just be able to get high Allegan boots. You'll be able to get a boot coffer and then just make sure you get the right one. So it has its little niche uses. I know it doesn't seem super important on the surface, but there are definitely valuable reasons to have something like this. And I think it's a good idea to retrofit old systems for the game. There's no reason to leave it old. It can be better. It doesn't matter if it's not as relevant because it's old content. It doesn't mean you can't fix it. They're also going to allow us to separate our conditional enhancements for the buff bar. So like if you want to separate your procs, like they use the Black Mage, Firestarter, and Thunderclouds here, separate from your like ley lines and your Surecast or your mana wards, you can separate them now. So you can move them around your UI. Still waiting for HP and MP to be separatable. Please. 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 That's fine. This is nice. I'm glad to see this. Ground targeting functionality is going to get some new options. You can choose to press the action button a second time to put them down. And you can also prevent the cursor from moving beyond range. So that way, if you just move your cursor off into the distance and go, it'll just take you the max distance. So macros are still probably going to be a little useful for this. There are still reasons to use the ground target macros that we had before. But if you're not a fan of them or you're unaware of them, then you have these options as well. So these are just more options for players, and that's always a good thing. You always want that. They went into a brief showcase of it, but we don't need to watch that. Also, you can now see party members casting spells on specific targets, so like Glare on target C or Raise on party member 2. That's nice and all, but I kind of just would have preferred if there was a target, like it just forego the skill altogether, like what skill they're casting, because we can already see that. I just want to see who they're targeting at all times, as opposed to just casting specific skill. Like if they're targeting C and they're using like instant cast spells, I know they're using it on target C. If they're targeting party member 4 and they're going to swift cast Raise, I can't see it. I just want to see that they're targeting party member 4, because right now we can only focus target one person, and then target of target means I have to target somebody to see the target that they're going at. I think there are better ways of doing this, and I hope that they improve upon it in the future, but it's a good start. It's better than not having it, but it can be better. Health bars will be visible when incapacitated, and this is specifically a change to the when HP is below 100%. I'm not a big fan. I don't like seeing that. It's useful for raising in places like Bozja, but I don't know. I don't like the visual clutter of it, so in 8-man content, that won't be a problem. but in larger content, I'm going to be kind of annoyed. So I might even adjust that on a per content basis. We knew Unreal trials were being removed already. They very specifically told us a while ago the next Unreal trial would be 6.1. They hadn't confirmed they would remove Leviathan in the meantime, but we pretty much figured that them leaving Leviathan in at 80 would go against the entire reason they're doing Unreal. So it was like a different form of confirmation, a hard say, yes, Unreal will not be in the game again until 6.1. Expected, but still. We're not talking about belts. The only thing we're talking about with belts is all the people with speed belt were wondering, were they going to give you a replacement? And they are. You're getting a speed ring now. Maybe it's a circuit ring. Who knows? So you will have an option for the speed belt. It can be exchanged after the release of 6.0. So you Eureka hardcore people, your money and your effort did not go to waste with your speed belt. It will have an alternative. We don't need to go over all of this. All the belt stuff. Downscaling. We don't need to do it. We've done this a million times. Thank you for explaining it again. The only thing is enhanced echo. They mentioned this at the last live letter. They might give an extra like mini echo compensation on a per duty basis if you're using undersized. Every different duty has a different amount of enhanced echo, if it even has it at all. And yeah, that should help bring things in line in case certain instances are not scaled properly because of the downscaled values. Also, EXP gains will be downscaled. That doesn't mean you get less EXP. That means the numbers are being squished because they're too big. And they told us this already. You're not going to level slower. However, in dungeons, all the EXP is going to come from bosses now, so you can't just farm trash. There's no more Zamiel 1 rooms. Those were already nerfed, and now they're completely nerfed. So it's going to be all about killing those bosses fast, fast, fast. And then this is the compilation of the screenshots from Miuna for all the skills, which then has like a light translation here. Again, we're not going to go into that now. We have some for the Reaper as well. There's some descriptions. Different video. We can't do that now. It's gonna be too much. I already spoke about them a lot. And it's all subject to change anyway. You're not going to be able to gather, get enemy drops, token exchange. HQ, like, base materials are basically being removed from the game. And certain non-craftable materials from certain content also won't be able to be HQ. But crafted items and gear, including intermediary materials, will still be HQ. So you will still have to craft high-quality stuff. I'm assuming that means there will be changes to the difficulty of crafting HQ stuff, so it's not like a huge advantage or disadvantage, but most hardcore crafters I speak to just say, just give me NQ mats, I macro that shit anyway. So maybe it doesn't actually end up mattering all that much, as far as I know, but I don't craft, so I guess I shouldn't say anything about that. They are going to be changing certain stats. Obviously, perception needs to be changed in order to affect the yield of items, so actions and attributes that affected HQ yields will now affect item yield. So like perception can give you more of an item versus giving you a better chance of a high quality item. Also, anything that required HQ items before, quest, challenge logs, achievements, all that's going to be adjusted. So you won't have to worry about that either. Teleportation fees are being adjusted. So when you are nearby a location you're teleporting to, teleport costs will be lower. If I'm in Limsa going to Summerford Farms or something, my teleportation costs will be lower. However, faraway distances are going to be more expensive. You can even see it's going to be more than 999 gil. From Casa del Sol, going to Wineport is 100. You know, going to Camp Overlook is 180. But going to Kugane is 1,400. Now, if you're like me, you're like, oh, I got 1,300 Aetheryte tickets. I got 2,000. I don't need to worry about this. They did confirm Aetheryte tickets will be getting adjusted as well. And they may not completely cut the cost of certain teleports. So sounds to me like maybe the old school Aetheryte tickets will reduce the cost by 999, and then you'll have to pay the excess. But they also said there'd be multiple types of teleport tickets. Maybe they were just referring to like the Grand Company Aetheryte tickets and stuff. I don't know. But we're not completely out of the woods, those of us with lots of Aetheryte tickets. And then they went into a whole explanation about how guild syncs work and why it's important and blah, blah, blah. Guild syncs are good for a game. If you can't afford to teleport, there's ways to get around that. And teleport tickets, looks like they'll still be one of the options. Also, the Ethernet itself is getting a whole mini-map with a better display and more clarity about where you're actually going. That is a massive improvement because I don't like the Ethernet now. Now, if only we could get a better friends list. If only, right? Also, so they're fixing big fishing with Fisherman's Intuition. If you get DC'd while you're big fishing, your progress will be kept. It does say logging out, so I guess manually logging out also keeps your progress towards it. But that's really a big disconnect quality of life for big fishing. And also, something I was expecting them to confirm, data center travel has been delayed. I saw it coming a mile away. There was no way, with the way things have been with the servers, that they were ever going to keep this on schedule. They were going to manually push it back. I was certain of it. And sure enough, this was on the bingo board. I expected this, and it came to fruition. So better the stability than to have this. Does mean I have to level a second character at the start of the expansion now, since I did raid on Primal, and I was banking on not having to do that again. But not that big a deal at the end of the day for me, and I'm still looking forward to when it actually comes out. Here's more of those Summoner showcases. I think that might actually be... Is that the last thing they covered before just doing translations? No, they're just throwing... Miyuna is just like, yo, I gotta get on this. And that's not even Miyuna, this is Iluna. Iluna's like, no, listen, we got to get on this. I got to translate it. I got to do it. I got to do it now. We'll go over that later. And then it was just miscellaneous announcements. Yoshi P will be at TGS, but he's just going to be visiting a world and doing some house visiting. There's going to be a translated panel with Hironobu Sakaguchi, the grandfather of Final Fantasy and creator of Fantasian with his company Mistwalker. Have played the first part of that and is very good. And Yoshi P, they're going to be talking about the appeal and potential of RPGs. And again, it will be translated to English at TGS. It's a 50-minute section, and I kind of want to watch it and listen to it, because that is super exciting. The next letter from the producer live is November 6th, or for those of us in the States, Friday, November 5th. It'll be the same time this live letter was, at 7 p.m. Pacific in the evening, and that's going to be covering PvP, crafting, gathering, and system-related adjustments just before the release of the expansion. There's also the weapon design contest entry submissions right now. Those close October 4th. There is a sale on the collector's edition digital upgrades. There's a new album, Time and Time Again 2, featuring the raid dungeon themes. I remember seeing that on the store, I think, the other day. We also have the vinyl set, which is, well, they're not even the vinyl set, a vinyl of just the single, the Endwalker theme song. But, and it also comes with a digital version, but it's just it's a little vinyl. The creepy, listen, I get that it's part of this, like, really high-end, like, Dolphy, like, brand. This thing is creepy. Get Ishlada. That's Ishlada. Ishtola, she's in game. That's Ishlada, okay? I don't want anything to do with her. She creeps me the fuck out. So I'm moving on. Perfect Alexander shirt. That's cool. I want that. Gonna get that. And then also a back scratcher with a massage stick with a fat cat and that. I've got a back scratcher right here that has the little massage things here, so I guess I'll just do this and save myself like 20 bucks. And then we also have the acrylics for Reaper and Sage. Those look really cool. We have job pins for Reaper and Sage. Those look really cool. An official calendar that is going to be coming out, but that is Japan only. The Dragon Quest X collaboration will be returning on October 19th and continue to November 11th. So if you've missed that in the past couple of years, then it'll be returning again. And a reminder that the 15 collaboration is ongoing until the day before that, October 18th. And that is the end of the live letter. Whew. 6 hours condensed into that, and I can tell my raid group is waiting for me because I just saw an invitation time out, and they are probably watching my stream right now going, happy, now you're the one stalling, so let's get to that instead. So this was a great live letter. I'll be doing all sorts of coverage on all the job actions and translations that are coming out, but for now, I got to go do some uwu and tank for the first time in, well, yesterday was the first time, but I'm tanking for the first time. So let me go not stall my party anymore. But anyway, thank you for watching my summary on this. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comment section of the video below, and be on the lookout for a lot of information related stuff about things we saw, opinions on specific jobs, things I want to see, and of course, they said that the media tour information will be middle of October. Regardless of whether or not I'm in attendance to that, we will be covering any information that comes out. So no matter what, the channel will be packed with information around that time. So anyway, thank you. Time to get to raid. I'll see you guys later. Until then, take care.